The summer sun glinted across Clearwater Lake, turning the water into a mirror of gold and blue. Mason Reid sat in his weathered wooden boat, fishing line trailing lazily behind him. On the dock, his 9-year-old son Lucas lay on his stomach, flipping through a dog-eared book about airplanes, his small fingers tracing the illustrations with reverence. Pine trees surrounded them like guardians, their reflections perfect in the still water. This small slice of Oregon wilderness had become their sanctuary, far from the memories that haunted them both. The peaceful scene shattered with a mechanical shriek that tore through the sky. Mason's head snapped up as a private jet tilted at a sickening angle, black smoke pouring from its right engine. The aircraft hit the water 200 yards away, sending a wall of spray into the air. Without hesitation, Mason dove from his boat into the churning water. The taste of jet fuel burned his throat as he swam toward the rapidly sinking cockpit. Through the shattered window, he could see a man struggling with his seatbelt, panic in his eyes. Mason yanked at the broken glass, ignoring the cuts on his palms. He pulled the man free just as water filled the cabin. Together they broke the surface, the stranger gasping and coughing violently. Mason didn't know he had just saved Christopher Blake, CEO of Blake Aerospace, the same company that had once been Mason's world, before tragedy changed everything. 6 years earlier, Mason had been a senior engineer at Blake Aerospace, married to Daniel, the love of his life. They'd wed in San Francisco the day same-sex marriage became legal, their hearts full of hope. Together they'd adopted Lucas through rainbow families, creating the family they'd always dreamed of. But Mason had discovered a fatal flaw in a hydraulic control system design. His warnings were ignored by management. 3 months later, during a test flight over the Nevada desert, the system failed. Daniel, serving as test pilot that day, never came home. The company buried the truth, offered a settlement with a non-disclosure agreement, and suggested Mason's lifestyle choices had affected his judgment. Heartbroken and betrayed, Mason had taken Lucas and vanished to this remote valley where no one knew their story, where Lucas could grow up without facing the whispers that had followed them after Daniel's death. Has someone you loved ever been taken from you because of someone else's negligence? Follow Heart Stories for more tales of courage, healing, and the strength to begin again when the world has broken you apart. November brought a chill to Clearwater Valley. Thanksgiving decorations appeared in windows throughout the small town, but Mason kept his cabin simple, focusing on making the holiday meaningful for Lucas despite their modest circumstances. The distant rumble of engines on their dirt road came as a surprise that Thursday morning. Mason stood splitting firewood, his flannel sleeves rolled up despite the cold, when 3 black Cadillacs emerged from the tree line, their polished exteriors gleaming incongruously against the rustic backdrop. The lid cars stopped near the porch. A man stepped out, tall, early 40s, with an impeccable charcoal suit that probably cost more than Mason's truck. Despite the bruising on his temple and a bandage on his groin, his posture exuded confidence. 2 assistants emerged from the other vehicles carrying tablets and leather portfolios. "You disappeared before I could thank you properly," Christopher Blake said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, professional. Not many people would dive into a lake to save a stranger. Mason withdrew his hand slowly. "Just did what anyone would have done." Christopher smiled slightly. "Not anyone. Most would have filmed it for social media before calling for help." His assistant stepped forward with a thick envelope. "We'd like to offer compensation for your bravery, along with a standard non-disclosure agreement." Mason felt his jaw tighten at those familiar words. "I don't want money and I don't sign things anymore." Christopher's gaze shifted past Mason toward the open cabin door. Inside, Lucas had appeared, curious about their visitors. The boy clutched a half-finished Audi airplane in his hands. "That's a P-51 Mustang," Christopher observed, his voice warming. "Beautiful craftsmanship." Lucas's eyes widened. "You know planes." "I should," Christopher smiled. "I've spent my life around them." While Lucas eagerly showed Christopher his model collection, the CEO's attention caught on something else. pinned to the wall with thumbtacks, a series of technical drawings, blueprints with precise measurements, clean lines, and professional notations. The logo in the corner was unmistakable: Blake Aerospace. Christopher's breath caught. Recognition flickered in his eyes as he looked back at Mason, who stood rigid in the doorway. For a long moment, neither man spoke. That evening, local news channels carried the story of the miraculous rescue. Within hours, the footage from a hiker's phone had spread online, twisted by speculation. Headlines multiplied. Hero or setup questions surround mysterious CEO rescue. Reporters descended on the small town, turning Mason's sanctuary into a fishbowl. At the garage where Mason worked part-time, his boss Ray pulled him aside. "Look, Mason, I don't believe what they're saying, but customers are uncomfortable. Take some time off, just until this blows over." At the grocery store, a woman pulled her daughter closer as Mason passed. At Lucas's school, children whispered when he walked by, repeating what their parents had said at dinner tables. The isolation that had once been Mason's choice now became his prison. The truth rarely matters when lies make better headlines. For those living authentically, the world's judgment often falls heaviest on those who've already carried too much. The question isn't whether you'll face scrutiny for being different, it's whether you'll find the strength to remain true to yourself when it comes. December brought heavy snow to Clearwater Valley, transforming the landscape into a monochrome stillness. Mason and Lucas decorated a small Christmas tree in the cabin's corner, hanging ornaments Daniel had collected during his travels. The strings of popcorn and cranberries seemed especially bright against the winter darkness outside their windows. That night, as a storm raged, Mason tucked Lucas into bed, kissing his forehead before turning out the light. The phone rang just past midnight, an unexpected sound in their isolated home. Mason answered, recognizing Christopher Blake's voice immediately. "Lucas has asthma, doesn't he?" Christopher asked without preamble. "You should check on him." Mason's blood went cold. A crash from Lucas's room sent him running. His son sat upright in bed, clutching his chest, his face pale and slick with sweat. Each breath came as a desperate wheeze. Mason grabbed the inhaler from the nightstand, but it was empty. The backup was missing from the bathroom cabinet. Headlights suddenly flooded the driveway. Christopher Blake stood in the doorway, rain soaking his expensive coat. "Get in, now!" They sped through the storm. Lucas cradled against Mason's chest in the back seat of the Cadillac. The drive to Oregon University Hospital should have taken 40 minutes. Christopher made it in 25, breaking every speed limit. Emergency room doors flew open as nurses rushed forward with the gurney. A doctor hooked Lucas to a nebulizer, his small chest finally beginning to rise and fall more steadily. Mason collapsed into a plastic chair, his hands shaking uncontrollably. Christopher remained, soaked from the rain, saying nothing but refusing to leave. When the doctor finally emerged with news that Lucas was stable, Mason looked at Christopher through red-rimmed eyes. "How did you know?" Christopher's gaze was steady. "Employee medical records. I've been researching you since I recognized your name." In Lucas's hospital room, the boy slept peacefully, oxygen mask fogging with each breath. Mason reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. "Everything I kept," he said quietly. "The warnings, the emails, proof of what happened 6 years ago. It's all here." Christopher closed his fingers around the drive. "Why give this to me?" "Because you're the only one who can do anything with it." 3 days later, they met in a small conference room at a law office in Saddle. Dr. Laura Simmons, an independent forensic engineer and former military officer who'd fought for LGBTQ+ rights in the service, connected the USB drive to her laptop. The projector hummed to life. Files opened one by one, emails with subject lines like "Urgent," "Hydraulic system review needed," and "RE safety concerns," no response. Scanned handwritten notes, photos of cracked components, test data showing failure rates far above acceptable thresholds. A memo from the engineering director to the executive team. Minor technical issue flagged by junior engineer. Cost of recall estimated at $2.3 billion. Recommend internal review only. Simmons leaned back, her expression grim. Who signed off on these systems? She clicked open a scanned approval form. At the bottom, a signature in blue by ink Warren Blake. He approved it to avoid a recall. Simmons said, then made sure the blame went elsewhere. Christopher stood abruptly, pacing to the window. If I go public with this, it'll destroy the company. Thousands of people will lose their jobs. Mason's voice was quiet but firm. And if you don't, more people will die. The most difficult choices aren't between right and wrong. They're between easy comfort and painful truth. True leadership isn't measured by maintaining the status quo, but by the courage to dismantle systems that protect the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. The Blake Aerospace headquarters towered 40 stories above Seattle's skyline, its glass exterior reflecting the gray January clouds. Inside the top-floor conference room, executives in tailored suits arranged themselves around a long mahogany table, tablets open, coffee cups steaming. Warren Blake sat at the head, his expression calm despite the emergency meeting called by his nephew. Christopher entered last, carrying only a slim leather portfolio in his tablet. He didn't sit. Every eye turned to him as he connected his device to the wall-mounted screen. You've all been briefed about the situation with our jet, Christopher began. What you haven't been told is why it happened. The screen flickered to life. An email appeared, dated 6 years and 7 months ago. The subject line read, hydraulic failure risk, immediate action required. The sender Mason Reid. A murmur rippled through the executives. Christopher clicked to the next slide, a photo of a cracked hydraulic component. Then another email from Warren himself, bury this. We're not recalling 50 aircraft over a minor flaw. Production continues as scheduled. The board member from legal stood abruptly. If these documents are authentic, they're real, Christopher interrupted, displaying the Nevada test flight incident report. One pilot casualty, Daniel Reid Winters. Warren slammed his hand on the table. You're going to destroy everything we've built, everything your father worked for. Christopher turned to face him directly. No, Uncle Warren, you did that when you chose money over lives. He placed his portfolio on the table. I'm stepping down as CEO, effective immediately. I've contacted the FAA and the Justice Department. Outside, reporters waited on the plaza. Christopher pushed through the glass door as cameras flashed and microphones thrust forward. Mr. Blake, is it true you're accusing your own uncle of sabotage? Christopher paused on the steps. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. The evidence speaks for itself, and I will cooperate fully with any investigation into Blake Aerospace's safety practices. While Seattle buzzed with the corporate scandal, Clearwater Valley had grown quiet again. Mason sat with Lucas by their wood stove, helping with homework, trying to rebuild their peace. When the knock came, he hadn't expected to find Christopher standing on his porch, holding grocery bags rather than legal documents. I'm not here as a CEO, Christopher said simply. I'm here as someone who owes you more than I can repay. That evening, they shared a simple dinner. Lucas dominated the conversation, describing his science project about flight dynamics. Christopher listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions. His corporate persona softened in the cabin's warm light. After Lucas went to bed, Mason and Christopher sat on the porch despite the cold, steaming mugs of coffee in their hands. Stars pierced the clear night sky with impossible brilliance. I lost my faith in humanity a long time ago, Mason said quietly. After Daniel died, after they fired me, I stopped believing that doing the right thing mattered. Christopher looked at him. And now I think maybe it does, because of what you did. You risked everything, your career, your family. Christopher shook his head. I didn't do anything you wouldn't have done. He hesitated. There's a position opening, head of safety and compliance. It's yours if you want it. Mason's hesitation was visible. Christopher added, you don't have to decide now. Just think about it. Society often expects LGBTQ+ individuals to choose between their authentic selves and professional success. The courage to stand for truth isn't just about personal vindication. It's about creating spaces where future generations won't face the same impossible choices, where integrity and identity can coexist without compromise. June brought perfect weather to Washington, D.C., rainbow flags adorning buildings throughout the Capitol as Pride Month celebrations filled the streets with color and music. Inside the newly established Blake Safety Foundation, Mason Reid stood at the window watching preparations for the evening's gala. 1 year had transformed everything. Warren Blake faced 12 counts of corporate negligence. Blake Aerospace had completely restructured under new leadership, and Mason had found his voice as the foundation's director. Behind him, Lucas, now 10 and flourishing, arranged model airplanes on display shelves. His science club trophy gleamed beside a letter of acceptance to the Young Aviators Summer Program. The boy who had once hidden from whispers now spoke confidently to reporters about his family's journey and the foundation's mission. Christopher entered with coffee, his casual attire a stark contrast to his former corporate image. Their relationship had evolved from cautious allies to trusted friends, and recently, perhaps something more, tentative glances and lingering touches hinting at possibilities neither had expected. "Nervous about your speech?" Christopher asked, handing Mason a mug. "Terrified," Mason admitted. "I'm an engineer, not a public speaker," says the man who testified before Congress and changed federal aviation safety protocols. Christopher reminded him with a gentle smile, "You've got this." That evening, the Lincoln Memorial provided a majestic backdrop as Mason addressed the crowd. Representatives from LGBTQ+ organizations, aerospace industry leaders, and government officials listened attentively. 6 years ago, I lost my husband because profits were prioritized over human lives. Mason began, his voice steady. I could have remained silent, buried in grief. Instead, standing here today, I see his legacy in every safety measure implemented, every whistleblower protected, every life saved. He glanced at Christopher and Lucas in the front row. Daniel taught me that love means protecting others even when it costs you everything. This foundation exists to ensure no one has to choose between speaking truth and surviving. After the ceremony, the three of them walked to the reflecting pool. Lucas ran ahead with a paper lantern, eager to join others honoring loved ones lost. Mason and Christopher stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the boy who had brought them together. "You gave me a second chance," Mason said quietly. Christopher's fingers brushed against Mason's. "We gave each other one." As fireworks illuminated the National Mall, Lucas returned to stand between them, a bridge connecting their once separate worlds. Together they watched the lights dance across the sky, their shadows merging into one. Have you ever had to choose between your truth and your safety? What gave you the courage to stand firm? Share your story in the comments below, and subscribe to Heart Stories for more tales of resilience, love, and the courage to begin again after loss.